So the Score Esports just recently released a video about this Arturo and Matcherino situation, and their primary goal was, I think, the end of this whole saga. And I think everyone would like it to be the end of this saga, but in reality, there's no way that it can end here, specifically because there's a few things that need to be cleared up. The Score's video really ended up being more of like a fluff piece for Matcherino. They took everything that Matcherino said at face value. Now, proper journalism would require you to get both sides of the conversation, and they did reach out to Arturo to get his side of the story. The problem is Arturo pushed back against so many of the different things that Matcherino had said and done, but the Score Esports didn't use that information to get more clarification from Matcherino. They just took Matcherino at their face value and then left it there. So while the video is supposed to have both sides, it ends up being really just a Matcherino piece. They recorded about 1 hour of conversation from Arturo, and in that entire hour, the only thing they included from him was just the voice of him apologizing in the end, because they really wanted this to be the voice of Matcherino from the very beginning, which really kind of paints things as if Arturo was just admitting full guilt here, which is what Matcherino had been pressuring him to do again and again. It felt very unfair to me because they were asked repeatedly about Matcherino having Arturo be an employee of them for about a year and not being paid, which was really, really unfair. And it felt like they didn't really clarify those portions. And that didn't end up in the video, despite Arturo telling them very clearly, hey, I want this to be in the video. I want people to recognize that I was strung along by this company and that they didn't pay me for a lot of the work that I did for them. I think what really bothers me is that Matcherino lied so frequently throughout this video, and they do it so casually. But fortunately, receipts always clear those things up. So we're gonna go through a bunch of the Matcherino lies, and I'm gonna list them out and explain to you why they're lies and show you the proof. The first thing that they do to demonstrate that Matcherino is a liar, like really early in the video, he very clearly says that Matcherino did commit to making an announcement once everything was paid out. Then he adds in this part, which is not true. For example, this part of the video.
As Arturo claimed, Matcherino did commit to making an announcement after everything was paid off. But this statement was contingent on Art taking responsibility for his actions.
You can say that that was the contingency, but that contingency was never voiced. All they said was, yes, we're willing to clear your name once everything was paid out. And Arturo called up Grant on the phone and clarified with him, hey, now, is this correct? Like, is this the statement? Is this enough? Is this what you guys want? Because he thought they were still going to be in good standing because, of course, he was paying everything back the day he recognizes that they make this announcement. But Matcherino never did make that statement. They've been silent for over 30 days, letting everything fester, which is why I've been saying that they are so guilty in this situation for almost destroying this person. That's so unfair. You said you would make that statement and then you didn't. The things that you're saying in this video now are the things that we have been begging you to state from the very beginning, what you could have done immediately considering you got all of the money on the very day that you made the announcement. That's lie number one. Lie number two. In their addressing somewhat of Arturo not being paid for a year, they lie and say that Arturo asked to remain with the company even though he wasn't getting paid. Outright lie. They strung him along, telling him we're going to get more venture capitalist funding, and when we do, then we'll make sure that we make good on it. They took him out to dinner, apologized for leaving him out to dry, told him that they would make it right by him. So they strung this guy along. Now you got to recognize the FGC is a grassroots community. So if it's a grassroots community, then a corporation coming in, stringing along one of the best actors in the community, the person with a lot of know-how that does all of the work behind the scenes, that has contributed so much towards this community, they take that person, have him work for them for a year, and then afterwards leave him hanging. How is that right? How can a grassroots organization side with the corporation that did one of their own, one of their prized players, prized organizers, prized front runners? How do you side with the organization there? It's absurd. He didn't just ask them, hey, can I stay with you? They strung him along and told him, yes, we're going to make sure I'm going to do everything I can daily to make sure that you get paid and that you're salaried and that they make good on it. Here's the screenshot. That's a Matcherino employee promising that he's going to take care of that. What's really interesting from this dishonest company, those screenshots aren't there anymore. Ask Matcherino to produce that same screenshot. They can't. You know why? Because they've gone through and deleted All of these messages of all of these conversations, they didn't want evidence detailing that they knew that they were doing him wrong. They didn't want to prove that they had it clarified that he was allowed to do the TOS violation thing of paying things out to himself. But of course that comes out later in the video too. We'll get to that, don't trip. The third lie was when they lied and said that the people that were watching Arturo's stream were not the people that banned his account. We know better than this. First off, we already know that Matcherino has been watching all of the content of all of these people when people are talking about this Matcherino situation. They were keenly aware, as demonstrated by the fact that while Bum was streaming and talking about someone that he believed that didn't get paid, but they now realize he had gotten paid, when Bum was mentioning that person, then Matcherino messaged him midstream and said, hey, we'll take care of this situation right now. So they were paying attention, just like Bifuteki and D-Nice. They're there whenever this subject is being discussed. So they were watching it, but you know how they try to cover it up? They lie and say, well, no, the person who banned you was not the person who was watching the stream. First off, Matcherino is only a 15 employee company right now. Some of those people are tech support. One of those guys is the CEO. There are only 2 people who have access to banning his account. Now, we don't have to mention who those people are. We're not trying to put anybody on blast, but there were only 2 people who had the ability to ban his account. And those people were watching the freaking stream. We know they were watching the stream. And it just so happens to be, of all of the time, 4 days after they've made the announcement, in the middle of him trying to clarify and show, here's the proof of the payouts and things that I've done, during this time they ban his account so that he can't prove anything. But we're supposed to take that at face value from this liar company? Absolutely not. What's really gross about it is you can tell he's lying. He starts smiling as soon as he's talking. He wasn't smiling the vast majority of this video. But now when he's like, well, you know, it was really not the people that were watching and da-da-da-da-da, he knows how ridiculous it looks and starts smiling in the middle of it because he knows it's foolish. Only idiots are going to lap that up. Who's going to give them that much credit? Nobody is. And what's really insane is that Arturo gave the surrounding context that would indicate clearly they were lying there, and the Score Esports did nothing to show it. All they did was just say, well, they said this. That's it. Dishonesty right there. That's not fair. It's not transparent. You know that they're all in Matcherino's corner, as indicated by the fact that they feel like Matcherino did him a favor. In response on Twitter, they made the statement, well, you know, Matcherino helped him. And it's crazy to me. We can see all the ways that Arturo's been damaged in this situation, and he's saying, well, they let him still compete. And what do you mean they let him compete? They don't have a right to stop him from competing for paying late? Like, what are you talking about? Absurd. The fourth lie, which is tangentially related to the second lie, is when they made the statement that, hey, we'll make sure that you're taken care of, you'll get your salary, yada, 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 right? That still hasn't happened. So that's yet another situation where Arturo did all of this work, he hasn't been paid for it, they strung him along, basically telling him, hey, we're gonna make sure you're taken care of, and then they haven't made good on that. Liar company. Fifth lie. Now this lie they didn't say publicly in this video, but they said it behind closed doors. There's a point in the video where they mentioned that there was a community member who was supposed to be filming this video where Matcherino was going to make a statement, and that's why they didn't come forward with the statement in all this time. They also mentioned that the community member backed off and kind of didn't want to do this event anymore, which caused them to not be able to make a statement. Well, I've had conversations with this community member, and the reason why the community member didn't do so is because they realized that Arturo had been in an incredibly dark place. This is one of those situations where I'm kind of reluctant to share this specific screenshot, but for full transparency, I'll do so. There, they were admitting that they really believed that Arturo was in a very dark place and they didn't want him to go back to the dark place because Matcherino was maintaining to them, as they were to other people, that Arturo stole money. So now we have a clearer understanding of why these tournament organizers were so reluctant to unban Arturo, because Matcherino had indicated to those people that Art has stolen money. Now they're willing to admit the truth that Art hadn't stolen anything, but they let that lie sit for all of this time. They are partially responsible for this misinformation. They could have cleared that up. Once that community member, out of concern for Art, decided, I don't want to do this thing, they still could have released a statement, at least even admitting that they had been paid back in full on December 30th. They wouldn't do that. That was savage. That was dishonest. The sixth lie. The Score Esports pointed out that Matcherino says that they sent out the legal notice on the 23rd, and they push back against the idea that they sent it to the wrong email. They say, Well, no, they told him where it was going to be. They told him when it was going to be, where it was going to be, and so on and so forth. They had not. I actually have the conversations between the two of them. They might not have it because they probably deleted it, so they can't get their lies straight. I have the screenshot. There you go. So it looks like they didn't tell him in any capacity which email it would go to. And so when he finally got the email on that day, it's when he had actually sent out the money. Now you might ask, well, why did he wait until he got this information? Up to that point, they had talked to him about paying out people still. So he needed to catch up. While he was overloaded and he had to go back and try to look and find out which events it was and so on and so forth, he was going to go try to make this thing right. And that's what they were asking him to do. Once they made the legal notice saying, hey, no, we just want the money ourselves because we paid it out ourselves, is when it was like, okay, fine, then have the money. And they got it, as the Score Esports said.
Grant and Art talk on the phone. Art sends $6,300 to Matcherino on PayPal 40 minutes after the initial statement.
If that's the case, then they got made whole the second they made a legal demand for it. That's why you don't have misappropriation of funds. As one of the morons pointed out on Twitter, who just wants attention, so I won't be including his tag, he made the statement that it's just enough to transfer to a bank account or refuse or fail to hand over money when the owner demands it. Well, the legal demand actually got to Arturo on the 30th, and the second they did that, it took less than 40 minutes for them to have already gotten the money. What's really interesting is he had already started sending some of the money beforehand on the 29th, so that they understood, hey, like you guys are going to get your money. I'm still paying them out. So that's what he was doing. Once they said, hey, we want this money on the 30th, he gave it all to them. Once they made that statement, that's not misappropriation of funds. That's not embezzlement. So people were making the claim of embezzlement because he transferred the money to his account, but we obviously know that was his typical method of paying things out. Well, once they made the demand on the 30th, within 40 minutes, or
almost immediately,
as he just said, once they made that demand, then he immediately got all of his money, right? So then if that's the case, then the idea of embezzlement is reach, you see? Because he would have needed to fail or refuse to hand over the money when they demanded it. But he did it on the very same day within 40 minutes. Not embezzlement, buddy. Nice try. There were so many things that I had a problem with. There's a point in there where he says, you know, man, I really don't think that initial tweet explained things well. Well, if that tweet wasn't explaining things well, then when he mentioned it and showed it to the CEO of the company and said, hey, is this good? Coordinated with him on what exactly that thing was going to say and got it approved, then at that point, it should have been sufficient. If it wasn't sufficient, then that means that the person who approved it, the CEO of the company, was wrong for telling him that it was sufficient. So again, this wouldn't be Arturo at fault here. This would be Matcherino's failing yet again. I love one of the things that proved that what I'd been saying was true from the very beginning. The Score Esports says,
for one thing, the payout to self is something that Matcherino was already aware of. They knew that Arturo had this ability, and in fact, his account was flagged so that if he did it, it wasn't going to just show up in the system as a huge problem.
They knew that Arturo was paying out to himself, and they had flagged his account so that it wouldn't notify them when it was happening, right? Because they knew it was happening, they knew it was happening often, and they were completely fine with it happening. So they specifically made his account so that you wouldn't know if he did it, because they knew that this was accepted behavior from him. So, as I said from the very beginning, paying out to self was a necessary function. Matcherino obviously sanctioned it, or obviously supported it, which is why they made it so that they wouldn't be notified when it happened. If that's not tacit approval of the practice, I don't know what is. They knew about the poor functionality of their website, but they let this thing go on with reason. I love this. I love this part. So then once again, he says, late payment was the only thing to talk about, as we said from the very beginning. That was the problem. Complications from workload, personal issues, family tragedy, that was the problem from the very beginning. All of these other accusations were disgusting. And for Matcherino to have taken part in some of that stuff is absolutely disgusting. So now you got still Bum, Beefuteki, and D-Nice, who have made this story a billion times worse than what it ever was. And now we've had to deal with that when the entire conversation should have been about workload, a person being not compensated for the work that they were doing, and people biting off more than they can chew. He says it again. Mishandling of funds was paying out late. You heard it for your freaking self. That's why we kept saying that. And now you have idiots on Twitter saying, you guys are changing the conversation. I don't know how that became the expectation of what was actually happening. because that was it from the very beginning, to any people that are actually doing honest journalism or actually doing research and looking into the information instead of just trying to attack. Lastly, they made the statement that, well, now they can pay him out via email. And this is really a classy move by Matcherino. And he's really just been chugging Matcherino for quite a while in this whole video. But I think that's the part that really bothers me. Once again, Matcherino, because of their piss poor functioning website, don't have it to that an account can have access to Matcherino without having access to organizing on the platform and generating funds, right? So then it's really, really crazy, because what they're saying is now, well, because of that, then we're not going to let Arturo use our website, but he can always use his email and we can pay out via email without him having an actual Matcherino account, right? So they're going to find another workaround. How did the last workaround work for you? Remember when you were struggling with the audit and all of those other things? Yeah, it seems like it's going to create a problem yet again. But of course, Matcherino, they're the people that, with the 15 people company, they're just trying their best to put out fires and make things meet. And they've been so desperate to hold on to good faith that they've allowed a person to suffer unnecessarily all of this time. It's absolutely disgusting. There were so many inaccuracies and inadequacies stated in this freaking video. So now I have to react to it. Of course, I can't react to every single thing right now. I just took down the bullet points of all of the nonsense. But let's just make sure we get one thing clear. Arturo never stole anything. And you can't say that he didn't have the money to give back to them, because the day they made the legal demand, they got every penny. In fact, they got more. They got an extra $400 because he made a calculation error and sent them too much money. Guess what they did? They left that money sitting there and didn't pay him back until the 31st. So it looks like Matcherino violated its own terms of service. It took them longer than 31 days to send the money back to Arturo, one man whose PayPal they already knew. They could just literally simply issue a refund, and it took them that long. And that's the standard that they wanted to go with about terms of service violations when they're late on this one specific payment, when we can see Arturo was struggling to pay out tournaments that weren't his, that he was doing for other people, where he had to chase down the information to find out who the winners were. All of this stuff was absolutely absurd. Matcherino has done nothing but disgusting work this entire time, and this PR thing right here was absolutely abysmal. And the fact that the Score Esports covered it in this way is absolutely atrocious. He could have done a better job. He could have actually interacted. When he put some of my video in his previous video, I had no problem with it because I thought he was going to be fair and be on Arturo's side. But now we look at it and we see that all he's doing is he's siding with Matcherino when Matcherino has done so many injurious things in this situation. It's disgusting. This is unfair. We cannot rest. Fortunately, Casabunch has finally unbanned Arturo. That's a good thing. That's a great thing, but it is late. But we'll get into all of that stuff later. This situation is not fully rested because there are still other organizers who haven't unbanned him. There needs to be a question now about why he was banned in the first place. It seems like the answer to that is because Matcherino intimated to those people that Arturo stole, which they now confirm they know never happened. I think that's disgusting. That is disgusting. People have said things as if I was doing this whole situation for clout. And I think that's the most absurd thing in the world. You have to recognize that at the time when I spoke out against Matcherino and against the mob was all taking a dump on Arturo, a man who was dang near the man in a very, very dark place. Me speaking out against them isn't going to gain me clout. In fact, I've been attacked relentlessly. You have making nonsensical statements about me being a right-winger and people calling me a bigot. You have Punisher making ridiculous statements saying that I'm clout chasing and all sorts of nonsense. You have people attacking my relationships with childhood friends, people going through all of my content trying to find receipts for things that they can use against me and not being able to find anything. So you got all of these things, and I knew these things would happen. I wrote it down in my notes the very first day when I decided that I was actually going to go ahead and make these videos. I said, I know that people are going to attack me, and my mentor told me, as if you know people are going to attack you, as long as you mentally prepare for it, you'll be able to handle it. This was not something that was going to gain me a lot of clout. This was not going to gain me a lot of favor. There are powers that be that are still right now working to undermine me, make sure that I'm like discredited so that they can continue this assault on Arturo. I've known it from the very beginning. I mentioned it way earlier in like one of the first videos. I just haven't mentioned those names. There are groups of people that are vested in this situation that do not want Arturo to be cleared. And so in this situation, I'm fighting against those forces. I knew they were undermining me before they even started publicly making statements. So the fact of the matter was, this had nothing to do with clout. It had everything to do with justice, and it had to do with me recognizing that in the same way that I wanted people to defend me, I can do the same thing. That's why I did this. I'm standing against the mob, not because it was a popular thing to do, but it was the unpopular thing to do. Why wouldn't I just take another dump on him like everyone else and just start talking trash about this person that did all these things for the community? I didn't know him. We didn't have a relationship. It's ridiculous. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to react to the score esports. There's plenty of things that need to be talked about. There are more things in the video than I could cover in a single video. I'm not going to remember it all, and I'm not the type of person to completely write out a whole script and cover everything in the video. So I'll do a reaction and I'll go on stream and I'll cover everything that they mentioned in this video, and then we'll point out even more of the lies that they told. Matcherino is still scum. Yeah, they're finally doing the right thing by admitting that they were paid, and then with making the statements, well, you know, they were finally paid out. Finally, they were paid out the day they made a public statement. Freak out of here, bro.
It's deep in